Hi, my name is Rennie Curran. I'm a former professional athlete, keynote speaker, author, and the CEO of Game Changer Coaching. I want to welcome you to the Athlete to Athlete series powered by the Game Changers Foundation and Sports Turf. During this 10-week series, you'll get to hear from former athletes and subject matter experts who will deliver powerful knowledge and insights on topics such as leadership, performance, mental toughness, and more. Register now to join us live and have your questions answered by our amazing group of panelists. Every week, we'll also be giving away $500 to one high school, along with many other giveaways to our attendees. So once again, my name is Rennie Curran, and I'll see you on the other side. Talking tonight about building mental toughness. I'm going to give you some tools, some tips to help you build your athletes, your coaches, and your organizations, and help them to develop that confidence, that resilience, tenacity, and overcome adversity. I think that's something that's extremely important right now with everything that we're facing in our society and in the world. It's just having that mental toughness, the fortitude, and the ability to press on, regardless of the circumstances. And before I introduce our panelists, I got a special guest that I want to just bring on. He's a current player. This is something. This is the reason why I created this foundation, was to really, for a guy like myself who's been poured into, who's been mentored, to be able to pass on that information to the next generation. So I want to bring on a guy who's one of my favorite Georgia players, a guy who I watch now. I used to be out there, but now, he's a guy who's doing what I used to do, making plays, killing it. I remember the first time seeing him his first step off the line of scrimmage, plays defensive end. And I was just like, wow, he's different. And he reminds me a lot of myself. His family, both his parents are immigrants and from Nigeria, just like my parents were from Liberia. So we have a lot of things in common. But I want to bring on just to talk about mental toughness from his perspective as a current player. So Aziz Ajulari.
How you doing?
Aziz,
I
good to see
appreciate
you, man.
it. I'm doing good. I'm here.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
Awesome,
mental
awesome.
toughness. Mental toughness is a real deal right now. I mean, we're
Yeah,
going through a lot of so much adversity right now. So,
right.
I mean, you got to push through it. I mean, it's tough, but you got to dig deep inside of you and find something that just got to keep you going and use
Right.
that as motivation to keep pushing yourself to never quit and never give up, no matter what
I
it
love
is.
it. I love it. And I know, like, I remember being at Georgia going through mat drills and going through just those moments where the coaches really try to just push you to your limits and see what you have in you as far as your character, man. So talk about some of the things that you guys do at Georgia just to build that mental toughness so when you get in those situations, you can thrive.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, after practice, some days after a long Tuesday, Wednesday practice, you might just get on that line and just condition. Coach got a number in his head. Just
Mm-hmm.
he's not gonna tell you the number. You just got to keep running until we get there. No matter how hard it is, we just got to keep pushing as a team, as a
Mm-hmm.
unit. As we stay together, we motivate each other to keep going hard, keep pushing ourselves to the limit. Because at the end of the day, on Saturday, it's gonna pay off for us. It's just gonna be
Yeah,
like practice is always hard, so the game could be easy. So when we get there on Saturday, it's gonna be as smooth as it can be. So,
that's awesome, man. I love it. I love it. And one more thing, and a lot of people don't realize this, man, when they look at us as athletes, like they a lot of times think like we just got that scholarship and we just ended up at the University of Georgia because we just got that talent. But talk about the adversity that you faced and the mental toughness that you built just in, growing up, man, and what it took for you to get to University of Georgia.
oh yeah, man, it wasn't as smooth as you think. It's always
Right.
student first, definitely. It's always student first. Student comes before the athlete, and just taking school seriously to be able to get to that position I am today, to be able to get that scholarship to come here is a big blessing for me and my family not having to school. So just opportunity I took advantage of, and I just kept my head down, kept working hard, just blocked the outside noise. I mean, I know you're in high school, you still definitely gonna have fun for sure, but just
Go
keep
ahead.
the main thing, and stay focused on your main goals, and just keep pushing yourself to the limit, no matter what it is. No, don't let nobody tell you can't do nothing, and just stay focused and just keep going till you reach that goal. Never stop.
I love it, man. That's awesome, bro. Well, that's all I got for you, man. Just I know you're tired. Just got done with practice and all that, man. But I really appreciate you coming on and sharing, man. And just
No
like I
problem.
told you, man, this you got that jersey on, man. You got that platform. So where you are now, you have an amazing opportunity to build your brand, to let people see who you are behind that helmet. So I appreciate you coming on and
Yes,
just
sir.
sharing your thoughts, man. And definitely want to do it again, bro.
No problem.
All right,
All
man.
right,
Well,
bet.
good
Appreciate
luck
it.
this
And no
Saturday.
problem. All right.
Yeah, bro. All right,
Thank
go
you.
dogs.
Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
man.
All right. We go down.
Yes, sir. All right. So that was just a little insight. I wanted to switch it up today, bring on a current player, and I'm hoping to do that every week because it's so important for them. You know, a lot of times they spend so many years on the field and nobody really knows you outside of your jersey, outside of that helmet. So, and then of course, my foundation is all about pouring into the next generation as well. So glad to have Aziz Ajalari join us. So now moving on, let's get to our panelists. So first person we have is Dr. Dawn Brown. She's one of the nation's most acclaimed ADHD experts, double board certified child, adolescent, adult, and sports psychiatrist. She is also the founder and CEO of Mental Healthletics that she's going to tell you all more about, and that's for elite and retired athletes. So, Doc, how you doing? Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're working on, all that good stuff. See you shining.
I'm well, Rennie. Okay, get my shine on.
Oh yeah.
Listen, thank you so much for allowing me to be in the share this virtual space with you this evening. It is such an honor to be here with you. Thanks so much. So yes, I'm Dr. Dawn. As Rennie stated, I'm a double board certified child, adolescent, adult psychiatrist. I'm also a sports psychiatrist and ADHD coach. And in 3 weeks, I'll be launching an extension of what I've offered for collegiate elite as well as retired athletes and Olympians. Mental Healthletics. Mental Healthletics is a company that is for athletes, elite athletes. And we actually focus on a comprehensive, confidential, and accessible program that allows us, or myself, an extension of myself. So we have about 20 board certified physicians that I work with, but I directly work with the elite athletes to evaluate if there's any mental health concerns that they're dealing with. It's interesting because when you think of the sports culture, you often think of performance when you think of mental health. Sports psychologists, but there's not a sports psychiatrist. There's actually not a recognized field in sports psychiatry. We're able to call ourselves sports psychiatrists based upon our experience in working with athletes and our help in assisting them and being successful in doing so. And so that's what I'm bringing to the table, bringing new face to the cultural world, and to make sure that we also talk about the psychiatry that's also an important component when you're thinking about athletes and performance and how they're doing on and off the field. So that's what my company's main mission is. Mm-hmm.
Love it, love it. And I think I messed it up. I called you a psychologist early in the week, so had to get it right. But no, it's so important because for so many of us athletes, we just think about pushing through, and we don't focus on our mental health, especially being in an environment that's so hyper competitive, hyper masculine, whatever you want to call it. So, we don't think about our emotions, we don't think about our mental and how that affects our performance ultimately. So glad to have you on just to share your perspective and your thoughts. Next guy is one of my personal friends, former teammates, a brother to me. I'm glad to have him on tonight. Orson Charles, and Orson played 7 years in the NFL. He's destined by how he rose above the challenges he faced as a child to not only make it to the NFL, but to become a successful businessman, spokesperson, and philanthropist. So proud of this man right here. He's come a long way from his knucklehead days. Glad to have you on, man.
Had to grow up.
Yeah, had to grow up sometimes. Nah, he got him here to talk about mental toughness and all the things that got him where he's at, man. So Orson, man, glad to have you on. Tell us how you feeling.
Man, appreciate for having me on. So to go back, I remember when you said that you're going to have this talk and you're going to invite some people on, and now we're actually doing it. I know we talked about everything that you're trying to do. So I salute you, Rennie, and the vision that God had given you to pour into the next generation. So salute to you, and I respect what you're doing. And everybody that's talking today, thank y'all for coming on. But mental toughness, I think that regardless if you're an athlete, a doctor, whatever you're doing, you're gonna have to have mental toughness because you're gonna have to fight through regardless of anything you go through. But understanding that, the circumstances and the trials that you face is gonna build you to the next phase of your life. So I think that those days where we think that we're not going to encounter any troubles or anything, and we're just going to be smooth sailing. Those days are over. Like nobody ever does that. So I think the mental toughness, having a strong mental mind to get through anything you first put your mind to is key. They say one of the strongest things that a human possesses the mind. So if you tell yourself you can do it, you tell yourself you'll overcome this obstacle, I mean, you will.
That's right.
So
that's right.
That's my 2 cents on that.
Oh yeah, man. We're gonna get back into it. I see you preaching already. I just wanted you to introduce yourself, brother.
Oh, my bad, really, my bad.
Nah, you good. You good, man. You good. So moving on, this man right here he's a legend, man, a legend in the game, and I'm glad to have him on. Glad he took some time to just really come in and just share his knowledge. I met Josiah through LinkedIn, I believe, and we connected instantly. And he's highly decorated, has a lot of knowledge in his field. He's the director of peak performance at the Texas Rangers Baseball Club. For the last 8 years, he's directed strength and conditioning protocols for the athletes. And in addition, for the past 13 years, he's also served as a chaplain for numerous professional and collegiate teams as well. So I want to welcome you all, Josiah Agono. Josiah, how you doing?
Man, I'm doing good, Rennie. I appreciate you, man. I love this environment, the table that you set. I'm honored to be here with you all and to even listen and learn myself. And for me personally, when you talk about mental toughness, this is something that's very personal to me. Just like Orson just shared, regardless of whatever definition of mental toughness you ascribe to, it's always there's always a stressor. There's always a barrier that's getting in my way to success. And as a strength and conditioning coach, and now as a performance specialist, somebody who deals with the mind, I am enamored with what people do at their breaking point, what people do when that stressor is there. And it's something that we're all dealing with right now. And I'm honored to be here. And God bless you, man, for your work.
Thank you, man. It's an honor to have all of you on here. Just so much knowledge. And I think about, like you said, just all those moments that build that mental toughness, those times where you feel like you can't go on, the times where you feel like you're going to give up, the times where somebody who you may even trust is telling you, oh, I don't know, and you have to make that choice, whether you're going to back down, you're going to give up, or you're going to keep pressing forward. So there's this, we could go on and on talking about mental toughness and all those things, but I have a few questions that I want to ask you all, and then I want to get some questions, some Q&A from the audience. So we're going to start with just one directed question to each individual panelist, and then from there, I have a few questions that are for anybody to answer. So one person can take it on, and then anybody else can just add their 2 cents to it. And as we're doing that, attendees, feel free to start pitching your questions, as we're going through, or just start thinking about it and whatnot. So let's get going. So the first question is for Dr. Don. So we're going to get started with you as a sports psychiatrist. Yeah, I got it right that time. Psychiatrist. What are some of the biggest challenges or trends that you've seen with athletes when it comes to the mental side of their game? And how have you tried to help them overcome that and enhance their performance?
Rennie, that's a very good question. And when we think about psychiatry, so I actually want to start with what's the difference between psychiatry and psychology, because there is sports psychology, as I previously stated. So when you think about psychologists, they actually attend graduate school. These are individuals that may institute objective testing or rating scales, forms, things that we cannot clinically assess upon examination or our interview with athletes. When you think about psychiatry, we actually attend medical school. So we're medical doctors. We prescribe medications. We evaluate to see if a situation requires or warrants medication in dealing with depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, stress. So these are kind of the 4 things that a lot of athletes deal with: stress, pressure, depression, anxiety, eating disorders, post-traumatic stress. So, so that's how I look at when in terms of psychiatric conditions. But going deeper, there's some intrinsic factors, external factors, as well as physiological factors. So let me break them down a little bit. So when you talk about intrinsic factors, you're talking about someone's emotions, stress, performing, having to be at your best, feeling fatigue, not wanting or not feeling motivated to do something or to do things. And as you probably all have experienced that at some point, you know, those are very debilitating because there's nothing external that can actually motivate that internal intrinsic factors when it comes to emotions and feelings directly. And then you talk about external factors. So that could be physical factors, things outside of you, family issues, family breakdown, substance abuse, substance use, those things that are happening in a person's circle that is not a part of their emotions, but outside of them that they genuinely care about. And then the physiological factors. So we're getting into deep here because it's kind of like saying, how am I able to be so successful but unhappy? Why am I, you know, receiving financial awards, but internally it's not matching up to, you know, my rewards or my successes that I'm receiving. You know, so we're talking about really deep emotions and how it connects to a person's well-being, their self-worth, their self-confidence. And so, you know, looking at all those areas, even in psychiatry, we look at biological factors, psychological factors, and social factors. And I also plug in spiritual, religious factors, depending on that athlete's well-being and how they, you know, see themselves in the world. I evaluate that realm for them to understand what their strength areas are in those four realms, where they're falling short. And this is all based upon their perception and matching up with the reality. Okay. So if an athlete is so hard on themselves because they didn't meet the match 5 times in a row, we have to talk about, okay, is that realistic or what interfered with that? And so I think later on, I'm going to tell you about the difference between mental toughness and mental illness because they are not synonymous. They're not one and the same. They're completely different, especially when you're talking about the sports culture.
Gotcha.
And so, you know, so my main role here, you know, as a psychiatrist, I do coaching, I do therapy, I assess for medication management. So I do all of the above, if you will, in making a determination and seeing if the athlete can benefit from any of those forms or modalities of treatment or management.
Gotcha. No, it's so extremely important because a lot of us do have those issues that you mentioned, and we use our performance. You know, whether we're achieving at a high level, we can lift a lot of weights in the weight room. We use that as a mask a lot of times, and then a lot of these things that we can, like I said, we can mask it, we can suppress it, whatever the case may be. But at the end of our career, that's when it's like we don't have that escape of being able to go and strap up and hit somebody and all those things. And so we really have to face ourselves. And that's when everything that you're talking about matters so much. And we don't even know how to ask for help at that point because we've only know how to do one thing, which is get on the field and blast somebody or you know, score a touchdown and get that false sense of validation. So thank you for sharing that. It's extremely important. I hope that by having you on here and by sharing your voice and your resources, that it starts to become the norm, that we don't wait till the end of somebody's career, that it's something that's, you know, already infused into the whole entire sports process, because you're no different than a coach.
Amen.
On the field,
And I just wanted to say something to that point, Rennie, because I think it's an excellent point you make. I'm not here to change the sports culture. I'm here to help improve it. I'm here to add on to it being addition. And I think that is so important for, you know, me as a psychiatrist to come into this realm, which wasn't previously accepted. You know, when you talk about people or players, you know, you hear, you know, take it out on the field, you know, take it out in the pool. When I, you know, help manage divers or whatever, what have you, you know, we have to understand that that field didn't cause the problem and it sure is not going to treat it. So mental toughness and trying to understand how can I be the best against my competitor is completely different than, you know, taking your anger out on the field, your anxiety, your stress. And so I'm so happy you brought that up because I think that is something well needed and it actually helps, you know, people in saving lives too, you know, and prevent injuries, right? I mean, if you think about, you know, the toughness of the sport in itself. So especially football. So
exactly right. Thank you for sharing that. All right, Orson, So you a guy who overcame lots of circumstances to get to where you are. So tell us from a former player standpoint, some of the challenges you had to navigate and how mental toughness played a role in your ability to overcome.
So I think to go hand in hand with what you and Doctor was saying, after I got cut from that last team, which was Denver,
Mm,
I had to figure out who I was. So Orson, who are you? You know, I sat
mhm,
in the mirror and asked myself multiple times. And then I had counsel from my mentors. I had counsel from my pastors. You know, I talked to some of my coaches because I was trying to figure out, okay, what's the next step? Because just like you said, like I was always used to, you know, going to practice or strapping up and going to hit somebody, taking my anger out. So what happens when I can't do that? So
yeah.
now we're getting into the real world. So it was a lot that I was processing. And I think over time, me getting on my hands and knees and praying and seeking counsel, it wasn't until my pastor told me, hey, Orson, I do believe that you're more than just a football player, and God just used that platform to get to your greater purpose. So
Mm,
then I started thinking, okay, so what do I think I would have a passion of doing? Like what would get me up early in the morning? What would allow me to stay late at night? And then that's when I got into the real estate. That's when I got into construction. That's when I got into trying to create a program for the single mothers, or trying to create an after school program for the kids, you know, creating a restaurant for returned citizens, you know, doing a dump truck. So then my mind was starting to wander.
mm,
But I definitely think in order to overcome, you know, and become mentally strong, we have to stop thinking that it's weak to say that we need help. We have to stop thinking that, you know, shame on me if I need to figure out my thoughts on how to process it. I think the moment we realize that we can and we should get counseling, then
mm.
everything will start to go smoother. I'm not gonna say it's easy, but it will definitely go smoother. And then that's when you realize who's in your corner. Because I mean, Rennie, you know, like, hey, everybody's in your corner when you play ball. Doctor,
Right,
you know,
right.
everybody's in your corner when you know you got that degree. Sir, you know, everybody's in your corner when you that strength coach. But who's really down and out for you when you don't have no title to your name and you start from ground zero? So
Yep.
I definitely think that you should surround yourself with people that you can depend on and will tell you the brutal truth. And I'm all for getting counseling. Like I get counseling from both my pastors, my mentor. Like I'm all for counseling because I'll be a fool to think that at 29 I'll figure out this whole world by 29.
Hmm.
I'll be a fool to think that. So I think in business and in life, you gotta lean on somebody that's twice your age that's been through what you're going through, so they can
Hmm.
alleviate some of the hiccups and the bumps that you'll encounter.
Nah, I love it, man. And I was, wanting to share a little bit about that journey, but I mean, you're exactly right. For those who are listening, who are on right now, who are younger athletes, I mean, that's one thing you don't really have to think about because, like you said, you have that escape of being on the field. But just know, and for the coaches on here, for the ADs, for the teachers on here, please do them right by preparing them, letting them know
Mm-hmm.
that this is eventually going to come. If you can bring in a Dr. Don, or if you can bring in a counselor, or you can bring in somebody to help them before they get to the end of their career, you don't realize like you may save somebody's life. Because I
Mm-hmm.
know, and the crazy thing is, I know athletes who, by all barriers of what you, or by all statistics or whatever you may consider it to be success, whether it's they played 10 to 15 years, they got to the second contract, they won the Super Bowl, all that, and they still have struggles. They still are, in some cases suicidal. They're still going through things. So just because you get to the NFL does not mean that transition is not going to be tough. And so I think, so much needs to change in terms of preparation and being proactive instead of reactive when it comes to helping athletes, when it comes to just their mental health and their mental toughness, and understanding that, hey, you're not going to be an athlete forever. So
Mm-hmm.
that, thank you for sharing that, man. Um,
And just to give 2 cents
yeah.
to go to all the athletes. If you're in high school, if you're in college, do internships, do externships, start
Mm,
networking now. I think that's what I did a better job when I went back to school to finish, and I wish I would have did an even better job, which was network, which was reach
mhm,
out to some of the alumni, which is, hey, if I even think I want to be a nurse, try to apply the nursing school or try to shadow somebody a nurse. But I think we have to start doing that now. The athletes have to start doing that now. And just like you said, it's really up to the coaches to see them past just an athlete. So once the coaches help them, now they have help from the coaches, now they have help from the parents, and now they're just more aware. So they're just not tunnel, just thinking about football. Yeah, you can think about football, but now I can think about, hey, can I open up my own business? Can I be my own CEO? So now the world is just that much bigger, because at the end of the day, the world is yours to take. You just got to have that mental toughness to understand and know, hey, it's going to be hard, but if you stick through it, you can achieve it. You can do it.
You're exactly right, man. You're exactly right. And I hope all the coaches, ADs, and teachers on here are really listening to parents as well, too, because this is extremely important. You're hearing from guys who've been to the top level, who are telling you firsthand that you have to start now. Like, it's so important. Because like I said, we know guys we played with that, like we said, have been to the highest level and are still struggling right now as we speak. And a lot of times they don't want to come out and talk about it, but it's very, very real. So we'll move on now. Josiah, baseball has an extremely long season. Obviously, we all know that. I don't know how y'all do it, but like 100 some games, it's a lot. As the director of peak performance, tell us about some of the ways you help to keep guys just keep their head in the game and performing on a consistent basis.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. You know, I think Dr. Don did a beautiful job of just laying out the biopsychosocial model, you know, with your environment, your biology, your psychology. And for me, you know, when I look at this question, you know, inputs always determine outputs, man. I wasn't really good at math, but I'll tell you what, inputs always determine outputs. You know what I'm saying? And so when you look at the mind, you look at mental toughness, even with the model that Dr. Don laid out, you know, from a biology standpoint, are you working out? Are you getting exercise? Are you sleeping? Are you taking your medicine if you have to take your medicine? What does your nutrition look like? You know what I'm saying? From a psychological state of mind, you know, are you praying? Are you reading? Are you journaling? You know, what are you doing for your mind? Are you listening to good music? You know what I'm saying? Like, what are you doing? From an environmental standpoint, do you have quiet zones in your house? Do you have a healthy home life? What are your inputs? Because your inputs always determine your outputs. And so for me, I believe that you have to fill these buckets up. I call them buckets, right? Mental health buckets, all these buckets. There are so many of them. Progressive muscle relaxation, prayer, meditation, reading, medicine, nutrition, journaling. There's so many of them. Exercise, right? Just walking out and looking at green trees helps you health-wise, biologically. You know what I'm saying? And so, you know, I want to share this quick story. I think I was a freshman in college. You know how it was. You know, you couldn't really work. You know what I'm saying? Because it was an NCAA violation, and you couldn't make a certain amount of money. And so, one of the areas that I did, one of the things that I did was I worked for this lawyer in the summertime. I'm a city boy, you know what I'm saying? I never ridden a horse, you know, still haven't to this day, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This lawyer, his name was David Delogier, and he let me work on his ranch. He's like, hey, just feed our horses, take care of our horses, you know, this, that, and the other. And so if you know anything about a horse, horses are creatures of flight, right? And so I'm feeding these horses, you know what I'm saying? These big, muscular, massive, beautiful creatures that God created. And I'm feeding these horses, and one day, man, I had this epiphany. And again, horses are creatures of flight, so any small, sudden movement, any rodent, anything that would get into his stall would cause a horse to just go crazy. And I remember thinking to myself, I was just like, dude, if this horse knew how strong it was, it would crush anything that stood in its way. Anything, it would crush. But because of the mentality of the horse, because he doesn't know how strong he is, he can't do anything when he gets, you know, that subtle kick, that startle. You know what I'm saying? And so, and how many of us are like that, right? God has given us these tremendous gifts, talents, and abilities, these great things, these great visions, and because of, you know, our buckets aren't full, we have no idea how high we can fly. We have no idea how deep we can dive. We have no idea how far we can run. And when you start looking at mental toughness, it always comes down to your ability to overcome a stressor, overcome a barrier. And much like, you know, we as former athletes working out, training, why do we train? You don't train to become big, bad and strong. Some people do, but from an athletic standpoint, you train in a weight room so that you can what? You can overcome in that fourth quarter. So the same thing with we have to do the same thing with our mind. We train to overcome. And so when it comes to mental toughness, how many of us are training to overcome? What do our inputs look like?
Man, hey, this thing over. You just shut it down. That was powerful, man. You said drop so many jewels right there. Filling your buckets, that was huge, because a lot of times we're so focused on the daily grind of life. We're trying to take care of the business. We're trying to take care of the family. We're trying to take care of this and social media and posts and all that stuff, to where we forget to fill our buckets and really focus on a holistic approach. And so that's extremely important. And then having awareness, the analogy you gave about the horse, man, that was powerful. I mean, so many of us, like you said, have those gifts and talents. We should be doing way more than we're doing right now. But we're allowing little things like those little rodents, like you mentioned. It might be somebody who said something about us or whatever the case may be, to startle us and make us forget like all the tools and resources we have. And that's so true, especially right now with everything that we're going through. And then, like you said, last thing you said that I took away from that was training to overcome. That's extremely powerful, man. Just training, not just for the moment, not just to improve, but to overcome those tough moments that we're going to face. And once again, taking that proactive approach, man. So thank you for sharing that. So I got a couple more questions that just for everybody to answer. And attendees, you can go ahead and start placing your questions in the chat area. And I will go ahead and start it off with another question. This is for anybody to answer. What tips or advice would you give to coaches out there who are trying to help their athletes build mental toughness?
First, if I can answer.
Go ahead.
Yes, so I would actually encourage coaches to actually learn what it is. Learn what mental toughness is, learn the components of mental toughness. It's something that you do. It's not something you're born with. You can't just tell every athlete to get out there and be mentally tough. They have to nurture it. They have to build it. And so I love it when Josiah was mentioning his analogy, because he's definitely right. It requires sleep. It requires meditation. It requires how you're balancing your lifestyle. You can't be good on the field and not good off the field. They're not parallel to each other. You have to be good in all these areas, or at least balanced. And so I would actually encourage the coaches to learn that, and to also recognize when players or athletes are not necessarily meeting the mark, not just to think that they have to, the consequences of this is that. Try to understand, ask questions, ask them how they're doing. It's not necessarily because they're not trained or conditioned to actually perform, but it does have a lot to do with their mental wealth or health, if you will. And I want to point out just one quick fact, Rennie, with this as well, is that I feel a lot of coaches unintentionally miss the mark with this, is that it's not just about mental toughness, it's also about mental wellness. So when you think about mental wellness, you're thinking about the psychological, the social, the biological factors that have to be in balance. So if someone is depressed, they can't come out of that and go ahead and compete. It's difficult for them if they're not motivated, if they don't have the drive to do so. And sometimes it's not as easy as, putting them out there and making them go for them, their own. It really does require to understand what is inhibiting them from performing at their optimal level. So, it's important for, I believe, us as psychiatrists, as psychologists, mental health providers to also educate different parts of the athlete circle. It's our responsibility for us to make people aware that this is something that has to be done as a routine for their teams.
I love it. Anybody else got anything you want to add?
I'll say this. For when you look at mental toughness from a scientific standpoint, it was actually it started off with a lady by the name of Susan Kobasa, and she actually called it hardiness. And so what happened was she was studying these high-level executives, and she found that some of these high-level executives, they were actually under a great amount of stress, but they were performing at a high level. And stress is not necessarily a bad thing. Stress elicits, growth. It elicits too much stress can hurt you or worse. And so when you look at all of this, this might be another webinar, but when you look at the mental toughness from the research, it developed into now what we call the 4 C's. And you see 4 main areas in mental toughness. The first one is confidence. That's the one that we all want, right? Every athlete wants it. Every coach wants it. Every advertiser wants it. They want confidence, right? Control, right? How well do you control your emotions? The negative ones, guilt, shame, disgust, anger, frustration. And then how well do you emit the positive ones? Joy, excitement, anticipation. The other one is a challenge. You and I can look at a singular situation and say, man, that's tough. Man, that's hard. Somebody else can look at it and say, man, that's going to set my family up for a long time. You know what I'm saying? So the other area is commitment, right? Yeah. How long are you willing to endure to the very end? When you start talking about mental toughness, how long are you willing to endure to the very end, right? And then you have, so you have confidence, you have commitment, you have control, and then you have challenge. Those 4 areas seemingly come back all the time. And so if you can train those areas in mental toughness, you can train those areas, those 4 C's, you can become more mentally tough.
I love it, man. You definitely have to do another webinar so you tell us how to train those areas. But no, that was great. Both of you all just gave some powerful knowledge. We had a question from my man Jamal Sylvester. He asks, what tips can you provide to someone who has fallen into a state of depression because things didn't turn out the way they thought due to injury? We all know an athlete who goes through this at some point, and maybe it's not injury, maybe it's they didn't get that starting position on their team or coach changed their position. I went through that. I mean, I played running back growing up, got switched to linebacker, almost quit. And then I just took on a spirit of anger and just started going at, waterboarding everybody. And that's what eventually led me to Georgia. But it worked out for me, but it doesn't always work out that way. So what do y'all have to say to that?
It's important to find a person's purpose and meaning. When you're looking at the high risk sports and the risk for injury, it's going to be there. There's nothing that negates that. Excuse me. But when you're in a situation where it prevents you performing, right? It's natural to have symptoms of depression. I would start by normalizing it for that player. It's okay. It's natural to feel the way you feel. You've experienced an injury. This has prevented you from playing, and you're not exercising, which often prevents depression from happening. So all of these things are happening at once, where the things that you do on a daily routine or basis is no longer masking what you're feeling now. So let's sit with these feelings and emotions, because it's important for the person that's working with athletes to validate how they're feeling, so they can actually start talking about these things. I think that a lot of athletes are living in silence. They're living in silence or struggling in silence. And I commend players like Dak Prescott, who comes out and say, listen, I was depressed and anxious, and these are the things where it happened. You all had no idea, but this is what was happening. And when you do that, you normalize it for other players, and so at the end of the day, you're treating humans. You're helping human beings, and you're not athletes all 24 hours of the day, 7 days a week. You're human beings. And so I think it's just about normalizing the experience, talking about the realistic, real expectations of the healing of the injury, when they can go back, how they can gradually get back into pace. I mean, these are things that we, typically do with athletes anyway when they're dealing with the injury, but, definitely start focusing more on the emotional and mental aspect of it, because I think that a lot of times that's left out, unfortunately.
Yeah. Anybody else got anything they want to add before I give my 2 cents?
So Doctor, I definitely think that you hit the hammer on the nail, but I would say take that time, since you're not practicing, take that time to figure out, what do you have passion to do? Like, okay, so if football was to end right now, what would you do? But then I think that, because I'm thinking about when I hurt my ankle, what did I do? Because I missed the last 3 games of the season, and I was still there. I was at every meeting, and even though they was practicing, I was doing rehab, and then when they were watching practice afterwards, I was there because it was good for me, and everybody seeing, okay, Orson still cared because he's still here. But then when I went home, I was trying to figure out, okay, what's the next step? What am I doing? So I definitely think for that athlete to ask that question, great question, but I think that you have to now start thinking, hey, what's next? And then still be in tune with everything, still be in tune with the meetings, still be in tune with the coaches and your rehab.
Mm. Yeah, I'll add, man, that I think when you get into that moment, um, I just can think about the many experiences I've had with coaches along my journey where I've tried to share my emotions and it did not go too well. It was a mixture of like, I mean, it's basically like get your ass back on the field, um, and just being honest. Orson, um, and so I think definitely it needs to be normalized, having the ability to just share those emotions and those, the coach having the ability to create that safe space. And then for the player uh, themselves, I think one of the most important things is just your mindset in those moments. You're going to be faced with that regardless of if it's sports or not. So how your self-talk in those moments, what are you telling yourself when you look in the mirror at the end of the night? Like what's the conversation internally that you're having? And then when you think about that injury, when you think about the comeback, are you visualizing success? Are you looking for every little edge to improve yourself? So if you can't, if you can't walk, are you working the muscles around that messed up area? Just thinking in a way that's optimistic and having a growth mindset, I think is extremely important. Like that's how my career ended. Was I got, a freak accident. I tore my patella tendon back in 2017 in April. And that was like my last go at it, trying to get back in the NFL. And I very easily, I had my days where it was tough, but I always kind of found a way, whether it was journaling, whether it was, like I said, like what Orson said, starting to think about what's next, learning how to share my emotions, which was extremely tough because I always had a way to push through. But mindset was everything, especially when you're alone and you feel so alone during those times, no matter who's around you. So that self-talk, man, that visualization, all those things are extremely important. So thank you all for sharing that. And just for the sake of time, I'm gonna go ahead and let's see. We don't have any more questions. So we're gonna get the final thoughts from our panelists. And I also want you to share just how the audience can get in touch with you as well. So Dr. Don, kick us off. Just share your final thoughts on building mental toughness and how the audience can get in touch with you.
I just want to leave as a child psychiatrist as well, I want to leave my final thoughts with the parents.
Ooh.
I just encourage you all to pour into your children. They're more than athletes. Make sure that you hone in on skills that they're really capable of doing outside of being an athlete. It's important that they build self-esteem and self-worth around that so they can become a whole person. And really just going to, if that's what they decide, and athletic realm, they're able to appreciate the wholeness that you've actually nurtured, help them nurture. That is so important, and that is actually going to what we say in the mental health field, further their prognosis in being excellent athletes. You can actually find me at Dr. Dawn Psych MD on all social media platforms. That's DRDAWN, P as in Paul, SYCHMD, as well as Mental Health Letics, Mental Health, and then Letics, LETICS. I look forward to meeting you.
Awesome. And that was actually a question I was going to ask too, but we got the debate coming on and people are going to be rushing out of here in a second to see Kamala. But the question I was going to ask was, for parents, how early would you suggest that they start introducing concepts of mental toughness and any strategies to start building mental toughness at home? Because we all know it starts at home. A lot of things that you learn, communication wise, all those things, it really starts at home. But for the sake of time, we're going to have to revisit that for sure. So Orson, final thoughts and how the audience can get in touch with you.
So my final thoughts, obviously I'm going to gear towards the athletes and the same thing that helped change me. Hey, you're more than just an athlete. Stop limiting yourself. God put you on this earth more than just to catch, tackle, or kick the ball. And I think if you continue to keep seeking him, he'll show you your purpose. So understand that you're more than just an athlete, and don't don't limit yourself. Dream big, because it's out there for us. So just go ahead and dream big and surround yourself with wise people and get a mentor in anything that you do. Good luck to all the coaches, the athletes that's out there. And how you can find me, my Instagram is O__Charles, and on Facebook is my first and last name.
So I bring it home, man. Final thoughts. Are you about to drop some fire?
I appreciate you guys. This was awesome, Rennie. Thank you, all the panelists. Thank you. For me, I think Orson kind of stole my notes, man, because I was going to say the same thing. Each one of you has a purpose. Every one of you has a purpose. And when we live in our purpose, when we act in our purpose, that's when we're going to be the most happiest. That's when we're going to perform at the highest levels. And that's when we're going to be just flying like the eagle, right? And we're going to be doing what God made us to do. The eagle is happiest when he's flying. The stallion is happiest when he's running free on the plain. And the fish is happiest when he's swimming in the ocean. So when you are doing what God made you to do, man, that's when that's when things are just, life is going to be purposeful. And so just remember that. And for all of the coaches, this is the last thing I'll say: heart, mind, body. The performance always happens last. Throwing strikes, catching a football, sinking the free throws. Performance always happens last. It's the last thing in the chain. You speak to their heart first. When you speak to their heart, then you can talk about the X's and O's in the mind. And when you can do that, then performance follows. It's not the other way around. God bless you guys, and thank you so much again, Rennie.
Man, thank you so much. All right, man, that was awesome. So many great things said. I want to end this by just, once again, telling you all thank you so much for being on today. This has been a dream of mine, a vision of mine for a while, just being able to pour back into the next generation. I'm a product of mentorship, a product of a village, product of so many people who just blessed me and did things that, for me, that, I don't even know if I would have done for myself. But just blessed to be here, blessed to have such an amazing group of people that I can call on to serve and to support what I'm doing. And guys, as you all supported me, I would love to be able to support you, whatever you have going on. So I'm honored once again. And with that being said, time to announce the winners for tonight. So for the $500 donation, I left that off. I mentioned the headphones, but I didn't mention the $500 donation, which we're going to be doing every week. So this is going to go to Mr. Navon, I think I said your name right, Navon Kathari out of Atlanta, Wheeler High School. You're not going to get the whole 500. It's going to go to your team. So, because I remember those days. So your coach is going to get that $500 check, and that's going to go towards food, recruiting visits, whatever the case may be, man. So congrats on that. And then for our headphones, Jennifer Gilder, sports and counseling psychologist out of Bellingham, Washington. You won. If you're still on, email us. Let me see if she's still on. I don't know. I think she might have left, but we'll email her. We ain't gonna do it like that. We won't give it away to somebody else. So yeah, thank you all so much. Once again, my name is Rennie Kern. I'm a former professional athlete, keynote speaker, author, and CEO of Game Changer Coaching. Once again, you can learn more about the Game Changers Foundation by visiting GameChangersFoundationGA.org, and you can learn more about me by visiting my website, RennieKern.com. I'm on social media as well. Just everything's at Rennie Kern. I want to thank Sports Turf once again. I want to thank the GACA. I want to thank Rhythm Communications with Rob Kramer and Amy Parrish for helping to put all this together. And that is it. Y'all enjoy the debate tonight. Don't start talking mess on social media. Maintain mental toughness. But nah, y'all have a great night. God bless.